Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. Today we have Daniel Ebbett here with us from New Zealand, and he is the CEO, founder of BlockBlueLight. Laura and I are both affiliates. I don't know about Laura, but my first introduction to you was through the QBC. You gave a beautiful lesson about light bulbs. So we hope to highlight on that today for sure. But before we do that, I think we should start with just your story and how you maybe then evolve that into how your company came to be and just some things that you've learned with your years on this journey. Because pretty sure you have some years on me and Laura.
No, not
Yeah,
not in
sure.
not in age, but in blue light.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thanks Laura and Andrea for having me on. I'm excited to share all my knowledge to your listeners. Yeah. So for me, I mean, I've been kind of involved in the kind of the health and light community for quite some time, coming on to like 19 years. But for me, it started earlier than that, and that was sort of around 12 years ago. I moved over to Sydney in Australia. I just graduated university. I was getting ready to gear up for what I wanted to do as a career, was sort of climb the corporate ladder, get into that kind of scene. And so I just started my job. I was really into health and wellness at that time. I was competing in powerlifting. I was doing everything I could to just optimize my body and mind to make sure I was performing well. And then within the space of, I'm going to say, like 2 to 3 months of being in this office environment in my new job, suddenly insomnia started to creep in. Never had any sleeping problems in my life. And then during the day, I was getting like severe migraine attacks. Never had a migraine in my life, so I didn't really know what was going on. And so I did what most people would do. I went down to my general practitioner doctor. Was like, hey, like I can't sleep, and I'm getting like 3 to 4 hours sleep a night. I'm having severe like migraine attacks. I can't stand any light during the day. And they kind of did what the conventional medical route is try to band-aid solution the problem, not find the root cause. And that led to a whole like cocktail of different prescription medications, from antipsychotics to all these off-label sleeping tablets. And ultimately it kind of just took me down a vicious spiral of my health continuing to decline, not feeling any better, actually feeling worse. And this continued on. So I keep going back to go, oh, we'll try this one, we'll try that one, sort of thing. And then it kind of got to the point where I think they were running out of ideas, right? Like, I'm not feeling well, I can't sleep, I can't really concentrate during the day. I've got severe hormonal dysregulation from sleep deprivation. And then I remember the last day I went into the doctor, and they said, well, we can't find anything wrong with you. It's you're creating this problem in your head. And I was sort of just like, I couldn't accept that, because I knew what health felt like. I knew what it felt like to be like healthy and full of energy and wanting and motivation and feeling good and wanting to have a lot of energy. So, and then to be where I was like, something's changed. Like, something had changed. There's not, and this wasn't just created internally within my head. So I like to say I fired my doctor and I went back, and then I went to just figure it out for myself. What I was doing in my job, I was like a technical specialist in IT, and a lot of what we did in there was sort of diagnosing IT systems, improving them, and things like that. So I started to apply that analytical thinking to the human system, and was like, well, what's the root cause of like the system not operating the way it should be? And back then, the availability of information around health wasn't widely available like we can get today. Like, podcasts like this didn't exist. It was, you couldn't really find the information. But I did start trawling the internet, and I stumbled upon a neurosurgeon in the US called Dr. Jack Kruse. He's a little bit more widely known now, but back then he really wasn't that known. And just his concepts of what he was talking about really fascinated me. And the reason it fascinated me so much was because he was almost saying the opposite of what the mainstream medical community is saying. And that just always like intrigues me as to why. So I started to dig into what he was talking about. And essentially, at a very high level, because he is very complex in what he talks about, and the the average person probably cannot understand it, and I struggled to understand it for a long time. But the very basic level, he talks about how ultimately the light we're exposed to governs our biology, right? How the human system works. And he was sort of trying to say, people are so focused on the food we eat and to try and be healthy, right? They're debating and arguing whether you should be keto or paleo or all these other little diets. And he's like, ultimately, none of that matters. Like, if you can dial in your diet as much as you want, but if you're under the wrong light environment, it's not going to have the effect you want. You won't be in a state of health. And I just found that really fascinating. So I started to look at my own lifestyle and what I was doing in my own lifestyle, and it had drastically changed from where it was. I was getting up, at 6 a.m. and going to work in the dark. There wasn't no natural light. It was before sunrise. I'd work in an office building under fluorescent lighting on a lot of screens during the day, not getting outside at all. I'd then finish work, again, sun setting, no natural light, straight into the gym, training for 2 hours under artificial light, go home, and then have to start work at like 11 p.m. at night to do IT systems changes. And so like that whole cycle I was living, I was like, it was all completely under artificially lit environments with really no natural light exposure at all. And if you just keep rinsing and repeating that, it was completely throwing my whole internal clock system just out of whack. And like my circadian rhythm wasn't able to function the way it needs to. So ultimately the hormonal systems, the your neurotransmitters and all that were just completely getting thrown out of like sync. And so I just started to slowly try to absorb his information and apply some of his concepts around trying to get outside, get natural light exposure into the eyes, trying to mitigate as much of the artificial light when I am indoors. So the first thing I did was I went onto Amazon in the US and bought a pair of $20 safety glasses. that which, they weren't, the term blue light glasses didn't exist back then. Like you could, that wasn't a thing, but there's specific safety glasses called UVX that would block like 99% of blue light. So I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to try these. So I'm in Australia to buy them from like Amazon in the US. They took like 3 weeks to come. And I started using them in the office as well. At this point, I didn't really care what people thought about how I looked. I felt so. I was really just trying to do anything to get my health back and sort of just trying to mitigate that artificial light as much and get as much natural light as possible. And the big change was obviously in the evenings, trying to make sure I wasn't creating a complete mismatch in the light environment, which is trying to really mitigate that blue light at night, because essentially my brain is thinking it's solar noon. And then within the space of a week, I could already see positive changes. Wow. And I was sort of like, I spent like a whole year trying, seeing doctors, doing tests, taking all these like advanced medications that did nothing for me. And the first thing that I ever saw some positive signs of like improvement in health was a $20 pair of glasses. And I was like, this is wild. Like, how can it be like I was, if anything, I was a little bit annoyed, like how I had to go through all that just to find it was like a $20 pair of glasses. Well, ultimately it wasn't just a $20 pair of glasses, there's a whole bunch of lifestyle changes that needed to occur. But that was the catalyst to understanding, I guess, what the cause was and then what I needed to do. And obviously using glasses and tools like that are a big part of it. And so within the space of 3 months, I would say I had my optimal state of health back. And from there, I guess for me, there was a desire to let the world know, like, because I felt like I wasn't the only one. I wasn't living an abnormal lifestyle, and I could look around me and so many other people were living the same kind of lifestyle. And I just thought, well, have people normalize this is the way they're going to feel? Like they're going to not be sleeping well, and like, do they get to the point when the doctor tells them it's in their head that they just accept it and kind of live a suboptimal life? So I really wanted to just be able to talk about it and try and educate on the problem. Had no real desire to start a business. I still really enjoyed what I was doing in my career, and I stayed in that career all the way up to 2020, to be honest, as while I was doing this on the side, because I love that so much. As much as like technology is like, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like it's provides so much benefits to the world, but at the same time, if it's used incorrectly, it can cause so much harm as well. So I stayed in the technology field, but at the same time, I ordered another 50 pairs of those glasses and brought them across to Australia and set up a website and started writing blogs and started reaching out to people and talking about, how like the world we live in, we've got to be really looking at the light environments and how that's having such a massive impact on ultimately our state of health. And I mean, from there, so if we kind of look from there to where we are today, I mean, I've just continued to learn myself, because I don't think I would say I've ever finished learning about, this area around light and how it's and health. But I've just then continued to look at how we can like create products and how we can educate people to interface into the modern lifestyle with taking that into account. So today we've got all sorts of glasses and different lighting, and I'm sure we'll talk about a lot of these different products, but ultimately that's where I am now, and that's, I guess, how I got into this 9 years ago.
Wow.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. We have a ton of questions, of course, and want to touch on the three pillars, I think, of your company, BlockBlueLight, which is lighting, blue blockers, and red light therapy. But I guess I was under the impression that you started with lighting, but blue blockers came first. Is that?
Yep, that's correct. I mean, we started with three staple products. There was a pair of UV sunglasses, there was a little red night light, and then we had a little sleep mask as well.
Okay, right.
But I mean, but then we really were just, I would say we were primarily we're still just in glasses for a number of years. And then I do remember one day I was still like trying to develop products around glasses and stuff, and then I was looking up at our lighting, and this is kind of when lighting was really starting to shift into LED, and I just sort of thought, why am I continuing to wear these glasses to block the artificial or harmful lighting? What happens if the lighting itself never was emitting it in the first place, right? Like, how cool would that be, right? And I was like, I have no clue like how to develop lighting, but I'll work it out.
Yeah.
So because it's quite different from manufacturing and producing glasses. But I mean, that was sort of 5 years ago. So we have been doing lighting for a very long time, and that's where a lot of my passion now lies, because I think glasses still have their place, because we cannot always control our light environments, but particularly in our home, we have the power to benefit everyone in the home, so they actually don't need to put a pair of eyewear on to live in an environment that's not going to have harmful impacts to their health.
Yeah, I've actually noticed as I help people, that is an easier shift, because changing a light bulb, there's no really behavior attached to it, because it's then just the light switch. But with
Yeah.
blue blockers, people like have to have that behavior change set. Like, okay, when it's sunset, I gotta put these on, or when I'm working at the computer all day, I need to put these on. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that I did that I found the easiest thing to do. I kind of have two questions wrapped in one here, because I definitely want you to talk about what blue light is, but also, as you do that, can you explain and give our listeners a history of light bulbs and what they used to be, what they turned into, and then what you have then created? So that kind of timeline.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so if we look at the history of the light bulb, it was like I think like 1890 or like 1900s, they invented the light bulb, right? So Edison invented a light bulb that's an incandescent bulb, and for a very long time, that's the type of light bulbs that all residential lighting in homes has been. What that type of light is called a heat source type of lighting. So essentially, what that means is there's a bulb inside there. There's a filament. Electricity passes through it, heats up the filament, and it's in a way it's essentially creating like a fire within the bulb to produce light. And why that is really good is because it's very close. It's much closer to what you consider a natural source of light, e.g., a natural source of fire, which has got a ton of infrared light in it, heat, and it's got then a lot of red, and it's got lower amounts of blue light. And so that's the type of lighting we've had for 100 years. And then in the last sort of I'm going to say it's really started to probably ramp up in the last 10 years, was the shift to LED lighting, or fluorescent or energy saving lighting, all these other different forms of lighting. It's now more, you'll see most of it's now LED. And what LED lighting is, it's a light emitting diode. It's not a heat source type of lighting. So there's nothing to do with a filament heating up and producing a more like fire-like of lighting out of it. It's completely created essentially on like a circuit board with a little diode that emits light. The issue with this type of lighting is that, first of all, it doesn't have any infrared lighting. It doesn't have a full spectrum of lighting at all. It doesn't really have any red lighting or these like regenerative and healing wavelengths of light. Primarily has blue and green and a big spike. And the reason it has that is because the diodes they use in it is like a pure blue LED. And the reason they use a pure blue in it because it is energy efficient. And you'll kind of hear this talk that's pushed by governments and stuff. We need to move to LED lighting. It's for sustainability, it's energy efficiency. You know, the older type of lights are very inefficient. They use a lot of power. They need to be replaced a lot sooner, so the waste and stuff, and that's fine. I kind of understand that the shift is being pushed because we do need to be more sustainable and how we live on the earth, and we need to look after it. But I always say, like, what about the people that are living on the planet as well? Are you looking after them, and have you considered the health of the people? Or anything living actually, and how light has such a strong impact on how our biology behaves, that if we're going to significantly shift the spectrums of light that we're being exposed to complete what I consider like an alien spectrum, because there's nothing really in nature that replicates the spectrum output of LED lighting. There's a huge spike in the blue light spectrum, and then when you look at blue light in isolation by itself, it's very damaging. It causes a lot of oxidative stress and cellular damage to us. When you go outside, that type of lighting, there's lots of blue light in that environment as well, but it's balanced. It's a full spectrum of light. There's red, greens, infrared light in there as well. And so it doesn't cause near the same amount of like damage. If anything, it's like it cancels itself out. Blue light is actually causing cellular damage, cell breakdown, but red light is doing the opposite. It's almost like the antidote to nature always has the antidote, and in light it's no different. So essentially, if we look at the history of that, I mean, it's a real modern, like I say the light and health crisis is a really modern problem. It really wasn't a problem it became a slight problem when the light bulb was invented, but very minor. I mean, using that type of lighting at night had very small amounts of blue light in it. So it was having slight melatonin suppression effects. It wasn't optimal, but in comparison to the type of light now with LED light, it's on steroids pretty much. Like the amount of like disruption to our biology, our sleep is like 100x what it was. But not many people have really made that connection. They think that the shift to LED lighting is great. I'm going to save money on my power bills. It's long life. It's great lighting, but there's no discussion around the health impacts of having a completely different light spectrum that we're being exposed to. That's only one issue with the modern lighting as well. So there's another couple of issues as well when you look at just how light operates. And one of the other big issues that we've exposed ourselves to when essentially the world has shifted to LED lighting. And I think, if you look at, we're in 2024, I think no matter where you go now, from just anything that's kind of emitting an artificial light source now is LED, from TVs to devices to phones to your overhead lights to street lights to car lights. So I think it's pretty much infiltrated any artificial light source now. The issue is it's called flicker. So flicker is a big one. Not many people will see flicker if they're filming on their phone, or they've got some kind of camera out, and they'll kind of see the lights doing this crazy kind of thing. And so what that is the light's actually turning off and on very, very fast. And the exact amount of times it's turning off and on is 120 times a second. And that's based because the power sources that come into our home, mains power, is called AC power, which is an alternating current, which means in order for power to come from the substation to your home, they have to pulse it down the line at a frequency so it can actually make it that distance. So it comes into the home and it's still pulsing at 50 or 60 hertz. And because the LED light source is at what I call a digital light source, it's got power, it's on, it doesn't have power, it's off. So the pulsing electricity is making the light just turn off and on, off and on, off and on very quickly. Why that's a problem is, well, first of all, again, if we look back at nature, there's no such thing as a flickering light source that's turning off and on. The sun is a direct current source, I'd say, but like to say it's on and it's just producing, emitting light. Fire at night, candles, all direct light sources. So again, very foreign to the brain to understand that a light flickers on and off. And what that causes is a stress response in the brain. It causes irritation, headaches, migraines. It can raise your cortisol, adrenaline levels. Essentially has very, very similar symptoms to overexposure to artificial blue light. So yeah, but you're combining the two together, right, as well. So it's not only the spectrum, but the actual flicker is doing the same, almost like increasing those effects. The older incandescent lighting didn't have that problem because whilst it was always AC power coming in and pulsing, it's almost like an analog light source. So it's heating up the filament essentially burning and producing light. Just because the power stops, the filament doesn't stop straight away. So like if you turn off an incandescent light, it has to cool down. It takes a number of seconds. So it can almost buffer out the flicker of the AC power. It does actually have flicker, but the modulation wave is a lot less. It will just dip a little bit and then it'll come back up in light, but almost an LED drops right down and comes back up. So it's causing a much greater, it's exaggerating that on-off cycle a lot more. And that's, again, not a great thing to be exposed to all the time, where it's just constantly going. So essentially you can't see it in your eyes, like it's not visible flicker. Sometimes it is, and that's really bad if it's such a cheap light that you can actually see it. But it's just essentially it's flickering over 60 times a second, so the human eye actually can't pick it up. But that's why when you use like your iPhone, it's got the ability, it's got a lens that can pick up more frames per second, and it's actually picking it up. So you can actually see what you're seeing, the signals of what your brain is actually, being exposed to. So not great. Then there's actually one more thing. So I like to say there's three pillars here as well. And the third pillar is the EMFs in them. So big problems with the modern lighting is all forms of EMF actually. Like, well, if you've got smart lighting, which a lot of people do now, they're actually emitting a radio frequency off the lighting. So people will connect them to their Wi-Fi so they can shift the dimming or the tone of them. So that's one. But then there's other ones that people even aren't aware of, which would be your magnetic fields and your electric fields, and what's considered dirty electricity, which is also an EMF. And they are problematic in modern lighting. E.g., the field that's coming off them can be it can be quite a distance, and in comparison to incandescent didn't have that issue at all. And it's really to do with the conversion of like the power coming in and converting into light within the LED bulb itself. If it's just a poorly made bulb, well, I wouldn't say poorly, well, it is, but it really comes down to cost, and it's a thing around. And I like to say, like, if you can't see it, people don't think it's a problem. So then why would a manufacturer be incentivized to change something that no one's aware of and no one can see? And that's kind of what I look at when I'm looking at LED light bulbs, is no one's really aware of it. Manufacturers probably know what it is, but we don't need to change that. So we're not going to. It is possible to change all this stuff, which is where we come in, right? So, we're spending a lot of time creating lighting, and in full disclosure, our lighting is LED lighting, right? And that's what some people actually get a little bit shocked by that. I can't believe that you would use LED lighting. I've heard all these health effects from it. I've heard it's so bad for us, and you're trying to promote healthy lighting, and that's interesting because LED lighting, or LED, stands for light emitting diode. So it's not the light emitting diode technology itself that's a problem for us. It's all the other things I talked about. It's the spectrum of light that's coming out of it. It's the flicker caused by the AC power, and then it's the EMFs caused by the poorly designed internal driver units inside it. So we essentially was stripped it back and said, well, there's so much benefits to LED. There are benefits to LED lighting. It's long life, it is lower power consumption, and there's actually a lot of cool things you can do with LED lighting, e.g. you can really start to dial in and modify the output spectrums of light and fine tune things that kind of to get how you want it, versus the incandescent lighting. It's kind of like, that's it. Like, it's just a filament and the heat, and that's the kind of spectrum of light you're going to get from it. So we essentially like to say we reverse engineered the LED light bulb to look at all the problems with it and fix them. So with the spectrum, we created a number of different light bulbs before, but the initial one we created was, well, let's just remove the blue light spectrum and let it have a ton of the yellow, orange, and red light. And it's possible. Like, it's just a different it's the different diodes in it, right? It's passing through. We're not using our pure blue diode, we're using amber diodes in there. So we've solved that problem. The flicker problem is a tricky one, but it's not unsolvable. It's just, it comes at a cost, and it's to do with essentially the power coming in, and it needs to be converted to a direct current source. So we needed to use a special driver in it that can actually take in the AC power, it can buffer that on off, and can then just deliver a direct source to the lights. And again, all possible, just a little bit more cost in it. You can't see it, it's not a problem. So that's why mainstream manufacturers won't do it, because the average person, why would they add more cost to their bulbs when the average person doesn't really know about or really understand why the flicker-free light source is better for them, because they're not really they're in the lighting industry, not the health industry. So, and then the EMFs is the same. It comes down to the types of drivers and stuff you're using. So ultimately, that's what we like to say. We've solved the lighting crisis. Now we just need everyone to understand, because it's not the same price. It's obviously, it's a price that comes with greater levels of technology and trying to create something like that. But my mission is to hope that we get enough awareness and we can start to get more mainstream adoption on these things, and it should become more the normal, not the, hey, that's that crazy lighting that people have in their house. It's just the normal type of lighting people have.
Yeah. Kit, while you're talking about this, I think this question kind of fits with everything you just shared, which I learned so much from just you sharing that. Can you tell people the difference between lux and lumens, since you were talking about those other, the three things?
Yeah, sure. That's actually a common question we get through our support channel. So both are trying to provide a measurement of like how much light or brightness, sort of essentially, itself is how much light is it being emitted from the light source. So like, I might have a bulb and it might be 700 lumens, e.g. it's emitting 700 lumens of light. Lux is a measurement that takes into account the area in a room. So you might be at a certain distance, and based on the room it's emitting out to, that's the measurement of how much light you're receiving in that area. So yeah, so it's more like lumens is at the source, lux is at like within the environment, how much light there is. So normally when you have a light meter, you'll have a lux light meter because it's measuring how much light there is in the room. And normally a light bulb manufacturer won't publish that because they don't know what environment the light's in or how big the room is. They'll tell you how much lumens, how much light's being emitted from the bulb.
Okay, very good.
I just have a quick question on blue light itself. What is the wavelength, the range, and what this spike that you talk about, does it spike at a certain wavelength?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the range starts at like 400 nanometers and it goes through to 500 nanometers.
Okay.
And when we look at LED devices, they all kind of follow the same spectrum. And so where the spike occurs is at about 455 nanometers. So pretty much dead in the middle of the blue light spectrum. So really that's the problematic. And I mean, when we say a spike, there's sort of 5 to 10 nanometers either side of it coming up. So normally when we're trying to like mitigate blue light effects, we really need to be focused on that 455 nanometer spike, which is actually quite, that's a thing that we spend so long trying to educate people on, because the industry of blue light glasses is everywhere now. I mean, you can go down to a Target or just anywhere and pick up a pair of like $5 blue light glasses, right? So everyone's jumped on the blue light bandwagon, and they're selling these glasses without really understanding the science of like what we're trying to do, or like what wavelengths of light need to be mitigated. And so what you find is with probably, I'm going to say probably even higher, like 90, I was going to say 95, but probably 99% of the glasses that are available really don't understand that or really address that 455 nanometer spike. They use a what it's called like a UV 420 coating that they put on the outside. So you kind of hold them up to the light, and you can see the blue light reflecting off them. So people think that's pretty cool and they think they're going to work. And the reality is they're able to reflect the light hits the lens, and it reflects off. It will reflect most of the UV light spectrum. Not really a problem with UV light, given we're indoors when we're using these things. So like, I'm not sure why we're trying to get UV protection indoors, because our screens don't emit UV light, but that's, again, it's great marketing on that. But they'll filter only up to 420 nanometers, and they'll filter maybe like anywhere from 10 to 30%. But the problem is they don't really filter any past that. So if they're not filtering, if it's 0% at 455, my question is, what are they doing? Because the artificial light sources, that's what they're emitting. So the glasses really don't work. Well, people think they might work, and I wonder whether it's a placebo effect, where they think, okay, I've got these glasses, I can see the blue light reflecting off them, I'm told that this is going to help with these symptoms. I feel like potentially that's where some people are seeing some benefits, but ultimately, if you look at the science, those type of glasses really won't have any impact.
And you're talking about the clear ones, just to make sure
Correct.
everybody's aware.
Yeah.
Yeah. I originally, so I had asked my eye doctor for blue blocking in my prescription before I really knew anything. So this was many years ago, and I would wear them at work, and I actually started getting some of this light information, and I went back to them and I'm like, hey guys, listen, I just need you to explain to me why this lens is blue, and it literally had a blue, like you were just talking about that reflection. And I need you to explain if that's really blocking blue. And they were like, no, we guarantee it's blocking the blue light. But at the time I didn't understand the nanometers that you're talking about, and the spike and everything. And so I can actually speak to that. So those glasses, they helped a teeny bit, but I knew that they weren't helping. Like, I would still get the headaches. They really just helped like with the eyes a little bit, but yeah, you have to have, they need to be colored, or they're simply not blocking the full spectrum.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it is actually possible, I would say. So like we have what we say clear lens. It's actually not 100% clear. There's a slight pigmentation in it. But you like those ones. So we've got, like, we're looking at daytime, like the ones that we're wearing now are a yellow tinted lens. They're very optimal for daytime because they can completely eliminate that blue light spike, that 455 nanometer spike, but still allow blue light through past that, which you actually want to get into your eyes to ensure that you're allowing yourself to feel awake, alert, ensuring that your neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, are being produced during the day so you feel good. But we have a step down from that, what we call our clear lens one, not using this reflective coating. It's actually got pigments in the lens. So as the blue light passes through, it's actually absorbing the blue light. And so we can filter 50% of blue light at 455 with a near clear lens sort of thing. But again, it's very uncommon. Like if you just look at probably most, like 99 clear lens blue light blockers on the market, will be just using that coating. Again, eye doctors, optometrists, they will, do you want the $50 add-on blue light protection? That's kind of what you're getting there. And that is the same. It's a coating applied on the outside. It's called UV 420 coating. So it blocks UV light and filters up to 420 nanometers. So you either get, do you want this, or you'll get the other story, which is blue light glasses don't work. Blue light glasses aren't needed. There's no research to prove they work. So we see this all the time. And I'll even get people send me studies. Like they're like, look at this study. There's a meta-analysis being done on blue light glasses, and they're not effective. And it's really, the problem is to do with people focusing on a screen too much, not taking breaks from it. And I'm genuinely intrigued when someone would send me something that says like it's been disproven, and it's an incredible journal. I'm like, I've been around long enough and read enough research and seen enough people have improvements that I know there's got to be more to the story here. So I'll actually jump in and I'll start reading these studies. And the interesting thing I find in these studies is they term them blue light lenses, but never talk about the nanometers, and never talk about how much they're filtering. They never talk about the lens they're using. They just say we had participants on these lenses versus this one that didn't, and they didn't work. And I'm like, I know why they didn't work, because they were using probably these cheap like UV 420 blue blocking glasses, which don't really work. And I'm like, I agree with the study. Like, I agree. If that was the lenses that we use, they're not effective. And so I always like when I'm talking to someone about that, like the analogy of like almost like a water filter, right? Like if you put a cheap, shitty water filter in, it's not going to remove all the contaminants, right? And if someone did a study on the effectiveness of water filters, and they concluded, well, they don't work because all this shit's still coming through into my water, but like, did they actually examine what the water filter, like, was it a high quality one which actually works? Because then the conclusion would be water filters don't work, right? But like, there's so many different models and types, and like, so it's exactly the same with glasses. The devil is in the detail on what glasses are being used, and I'm blown away. It makes it into like medical journals and stuff without having what I would call like scientific method of like what the product like was and the specifications were, but it never does. It's always just blue light lenses.
Wow, you would think that they would have to submit the spectrometer reading on that at least, or
Yeah.
there'd be some kind of a standard, but unfortunately there's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad you mentioned that.
We were going to ask you some health effects of blue light, but we are on the subject of blue blockers, so maybe we'll just talk about the blue blockers quickly and jump back to that. But can you tell us about the kinds of blue blockers? We've both been looking at your website, so we know some really cool things that you offer. But yeah, what makes your blue blocker special, I guess, would be the question.
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, I think there's two clear distinctions in glasses that confuses a lot of people as well, which is like you've got ones for daytime and you've got ones for nighttime, and they're used for very different reasons. So they're not really, there's no crossover in like, well, I can use my day at night, my night and day. If you actually do that, you'll be worse off, right? Like if I put a set of nighttime glasses on during the daytime, I'd be better off just not wearing any at all, because it's really going to start to cause, you're really going to start to be modifying the light spectrums coming into your eyes incorrectly. So ultimately, during the daytime, we've got two different lenses. I kind of talked about the clear lenses before that we do, and then a yellow lens. And the goal with them isn't to not block blue light. It's actually to just filter blue light down. So the main problem we have during the daytime is we primarily work in indoor artificially LED lit environments, which we talked about all the spectrums coming from LEDs. So being under those environments like 8 hours a day indoors really isn't good for us. It's a very, very high levels of blue, no reds, no infrared light, none of these like healing regenerative wavelengths. So the main symptoms we see with that, and because also we're normally looking at screens at close proximity, it's coming straight into the eyes. And what that's doing is causing essentially low-level eye damage. It's over the long term causing macular degeneration. Short-term symptoms are eye strain, headaches, migraines, dry eyes, all these kind of symptoms we're getting. And what that is the blue light being entering into the eyes in isolation, so it's not balanced, and that's causing cell damage, oxidative stress, reactive oxygen species, all these kind of problems within the eye. Also, but there is research around the blue light in isolation on the skin as well, aging the skin faster as well. So the primary purpose of using the glasses during the daytime is to not eliminate it, but bring the levels down. So it's not like such an intense level of blue light. It's almost trying to balance it back. So there, you do have some of the other natural light in the environment. As long as you're not in a complete like dark room with no windows, there will be some natural light coming through. You're just trying to balance those levels back out again. So that's what your daytime glasses do. At nighttime, very different purpose is you're trying to eliminate all blue light. Blue light at night is really unnatural. So the only natural source of blue light in our environment is the sun. So the sun sets, we have evolved to not, our biology has evolved to not really have any blue light signals coming in anymore. And the real big problem with any blue light at night is in our eyes, we have particular receptors, and they're not the receptors we use to see vision. They're non-visual photoreceptors. So they're receptors that are taking in light, but not for vision. So essentially there's a whole bunch of receptors called melanopsin receptors. And what they're doing is they're taking in light, responding to the light in the environment, particularly the blue light, because they understand that if there's blue light in the environment, it's daytime because the sun is up. Because if that's the only possible cause of blue light being in the environment, because there's no other emitter of blue light comes in, so that those receptors are essentially activated under sensing blue light. They then send a signal into the central clock system in our brain to tell the brain, hey, it is daytime, or essentially tell the brain what time of the day it is. So then the body can then regulate its own day-night cycle. So that generally means the main things it's going to do during the daytime is it's going to instruct the body to release cortisol and adrenaline in the right amount, so you feel awake and alert. It's going to help regulate our neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, so we have good mood regulation during the daytime as well. So the problem is, the way most people live is sun is up, the sun sets. Well, no one lives in the dark or goes to bed right on sunset, so all the artificial light sources get turned on in our homes. We normally consume technology in the evenings as well, and that essentially is an artificial sun. Like your ancestral brain actually doesn't really understand the difference between the sun, blue light from the sun, and blue light from your light. So it then continues to think it's solar noon, like it's stuck in like it can't continue it can't go around its 24-hour cycle anymore, because the light environment is the clock. So what it causes is what we call a circadian rhythm phase shift. Essentially, it's changing the clock, it's changing the time, changing it back constantly until the lights are turned down, the blue light is eliminated from the environment, and then it can start its processes. So that's what ultimately will cause sleeping problems. Yeah, so I mean, the main problem it's causing is melatonin disruption. Melatonin is our sleep hormone it's not just a sleep hormone, but that's one of its primary functions, is to help us get better sleep. So you're under an optimal kind of like circadian rhythm, as your cortisol will drop down to its lowest and your melatonin will rise to its highest to allow you to sleep. So essentially using glasses in the evening is to block out all the blue light, to allow your brain to understand that it is dark and it is nighttime and it is time to start to wind down and rest and go to sleep. So you really need a pair, and those kind of glasses are an orange tint or a red tint. So then there are no way a type of clear lens or a really light yellow lens that's going to help with your sleep at all, because they're just letting far too much blue light through. So even with a set of those glasses on, they may be filtering some light, but there's still a strong signal coming into the brain that there's blue light in the environment. Therefore, that cascade of continuing to allow cortisol to remain high will stay in effect. So that's why you can't use daytime ones at nighttime. And then the opposite is, if you try to use nighttime glasses during the daytime, if you put a set of 100% blue light blocking glasses on during the daytime, now your brain will think it's nighttime. So it's just causing mass confusion, right? So now suddenly we're like, okay, well, it's time to like lower my cortisol, increase melatonin, and that's the last thing you actually want during the daytime. You'll start to feel tired, unmotivated, just wanting to go to sleep. And so that's actually a problem, because people may uneducatedly buy a set of glasses and think, I've heard blue light's bad, I need to wear glasses, these blue light blockers to improve my health, and they actually put them on during the daytime. So there's a whole big education piece about, no, don't do that. You actually need to make sure you're using the right pair of glasses for the right time of the day. Because the common question is, can I just have one pair that does everything, right? I just want one that, I don't want two pairs of glasses. But it's very important you actually don't, like I said at the start, you're better off not wearing a pair than wearing the wrong pair.
Yeah, I saw someone where they were outside. It was a beautiful sunny day, and she was walking with orange lenses on.
Uh,
And I was
yeah.
like, so yeah, there's definitely people who think this is like a trend or a fashion statement, and they're not getting the education. So yeah, hopefully this podcast will reach all those people.
I would say I was with you, Daniel, with the UVEX, and I think I had them for a couple of years before I finally, started to learn about other, evening with the orange lenses, and I think I felt better. I don't know if it helped. I just didn't get the double vision, but I was still working till 11 at night, so obviously it was letting too much blue light. But yeah, goodness, yeah. Can you just now you've got some interesting options. You've got, I think, kids glasses. Is that right?
Yeah,
Is
I mean,
that
we've got a lot of different frames now, and so kids'
yeah.
glasses, like the smaller frames, and then just all the different lens types as well, from daytime to nighttime.
And
Yeah,
you offer a prescription option?
yeah. So we've got a full, because that we now have a full partnered optics lab where we can create any prescription. We can do custom glasses where people send them their own particular frames they want. We'll create the lenses and fit them in as well. So yeah,
Yeah. And then one thing I just want to point out is that I felt like it was affordable. You're because a lot of people, want to buy, for example, kids. I've had a lot of clients come to me and say, I really want them for my kids. I'm sold, the parents are sold on the idea. And you go to them and they're so expensive, and then you break them. The kids break
yeah,
them, I break them. And so that was but even your adult, non-prescription, I feel like the price is affordable compared to some other companies. So just wanted to point that out for
yeah.
people to take a look. And yeah. And you've
Well, we've
also
always
got
tried. Oh, sorry. I was just saying what we've always tried to do is create a bit of a balance between making them affordable but decent quality, but not
mm,
going to the point where they're like so unaffordable that they're like top end. I mean, because I keep bringing it back to like, what's their purpose? Like, they're not they're not really designed to. That the ultimate purpose is for health, to feel better. So I'm like, and making sure it's accessible to people, and they don't need to be high end designer frames. They need to be good, that they're going to last. But so yeah, I was kind of finding a bit of balance in there where we're not just creating this product that's out of reach for people.
right. And then I was interested to see that you have clip-ons and fit overs for people who don't want to actually, change their prescription glasses. They may just want to keep their glasses and try this out. So I always
Yeah,
it's so nice to have that option. And the other one for me, almost, I'm heading closer to the 60s here, is readers. I saw that you have readers, and you have like choices of magnification at like point, is it plus 2.25 plus 2.5?
yeah, increments of 0.25 all the way through. Yeah,
Yeah, because our local pharmacies have them, quite cheap here. And I pulled out the first pair, and it's like they're way too strong. And I'm worried
yeah,
about, I'm one of these people that really doesn't want to use them because I'm worried that, it's going to make my eyes weaker very quickly. And so I thought that was very interesting that you had readers. So yeah. Oh, goodness. Where do we want to go, Andy? I'm not sure of the time. Do we want to, we've kind of
Yeah,
talked about
we
most of
have
the health stuff we've covered, right?
yes, I think so.
Yeah.
And so I
Good.
know that we had some questions about, well, you talked about the light bulbs, and we know
Yeah.
that you offer red light therapy, maybe talking about, like, that's really the only thing we haven't touched on.
More on light bulbs, though. Could you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about your unique light bulbs?
yeah. I mean, so I'd kind of touch on that. We obviously initially created a blue
Mm,
light free light bulb, which
mhm.
we sold for a number of years, and then we are kind of getting people going, love your light bulbs, like awesome for the night, like, but like, what do I like? Sometimes you need lighting during the day as well. And I struggled to provide a recommendation because I couldn't recommend our lighting for the daytime because it had no blue light in it. And like we talked about, I think blue light's so important to actually get the right exposure to blue light during the day. So if you kind of were in a home, needed to turn on light, there wouldn't be enough blue light in the environment. And at the same time, I couldn't really recommend conventional lighting for all the problems it has. So I was like, there's this kind of area where I don't really have a solution for you. So we, again, like we looked at the different kind of like LED diodes. I said like how there's ways to really modify the spectrum it emits. So we looked at it and we were able to create what's called like a full spectrum light. And so that would have equal amounts of all the colors of the spectrum. So it was equal, there's good levels of blue light in there, but it was balanced with the same amount of red light in there and all the colors in between. And so the idea was to make it very, very similar to if I took a spectrometer outside and measured it, it would create a very similar kind of levels of light, apart from the UV light and infrared light, the non-visible spectrums. They're a little bit more difficult to start to put into residential lighting. But if we could at least get the visible spectrums in there, we could at least make it a good type of lighting that you could use during the daytime. So we actually created that, but then we didn't release it because then I was playing around with them in my home. I said, like, okay, I've got these full spectrum lighting, they're great. I've got my nighttime lighting. I was like, this is actually really annoying because I can't turn those lights on at night because those are full spectrum, got too much blue light in it. These ones for the day, I was like, so I have to go up and like change the light bulbs down for night and stuff. And I was like, this is not a practical solution, right? Like I could sell all these full spectrum light bulbs, but then like, are people going to like have to label their light switches like, don't turn this one on at night, like turn this one on, sort of thing. So I was like, how can we like put both technologies together, right? That's what I was like, there's got to be a way we can have the night lighting and the day lighting in a single bulb. And most of the technologies around doing that, we're using like Wi-Fi and smart technology for it to shift the spectrum. And I was like, well, we don't want to do that because that kind of goes against like our values on what we do with our products, which is we need to make sure we're creating products that like, facilitate health and not like, you don't want to like create, you solve one problem here, but then you create another problem here. So like in that, like if we were creating light bulbs that had like high radio frequencies coming off all of them, that wouldn't really, the net effect of health, I don't know, I didn't feel good about it. So we kind of continued to look at how we could do it. And ultimately what we came up with was we were able to get the nighttime lighting in there, the blue light free lighting, the full spectrum lighting, and then a third mode that sat in the middle of it, which was what we call like the in-between mode, which has got lower levels of blue light and the full spectrum light in it. So again, it's like a warmer light, but not the full no blue light. And then the way we worked it out how we could switch it in between is we created like essentially a program that sat inside the bulb, and when you turn the light switch off and on quickly, it would change through the different modes. So more of a manual way of switching it. And so that's what we've got now. It's called our BioLight, and it's got all the spectrums that you need that you can use for day and night. So you've got kind of in the early morning, you wouldn't use the full spectrum mode because it's got a lot more blue light than you would have in the environment, because normally when the sun rises, there's a lot of reds, but there's a low amount of blue light, and as the day goes on, it sort of starts to get to the highest levels of blue light around midday. So you can kind of do the same thing with the light bulb. You can start with the full spectrum mode on the lower blue light mode. Then when you get sort of into the later morning, into the midday, you could turn it back onto a full spectrum, like a bright, nice white light. And then as you're coming into the afternoon, you can go back to the lower blue mode. And then when you get into the evening, you turn it to the full 100% blue light free mode. So it's kind of like, we call like a circadian friendly light bulb that can mimic the different phases of light that you should be exposed to in nature.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Wow.
that's the light I have in my kitchen. I absolutely love it because you're right. It's very unrealistic to be changing your light bulb out. I'm a short person, so I always have to stand on a stool, and it's very annoying. And yeah, so thank you so much for creating that. That is one of the things I recommend for people all the time. Laura, were you going to ask another question?
Yeah. You have my understanding is you have lights you can travel with and like reading lights. You want to tell us about those?
Yeah, so I mean,
if someone was traveling.
yeah, like I mean, this is another interesting story. So we started with the light bulbs, right? And for me as well, I was like, so when I go traveling, I'd like pack a suitcase full of light bulbs, right? Like, because I was like, I'd go be
I
staying
still do
like
that.
in an
Why need help?
Airbnb, and I'm like, I can't deal with all these lights. So I like take them all out, put our light bulbs in, sort of thing. And then it was getting annoying because like you either forget to pack them or you forget to take them away with you. And then some probably some Airbnb owners are like, what are these crazy red light bulbs that the guest has left in our house? So then we started to really look at developing more convenient solutions. So we created a whole bunch of like portable lamps that are battery powered, so you can kind of just fold them up and take them away with you. We've got like little book lights that can clip onto your book. We've got like motion lights as well that are motion activated that can you can just pack. We've got what things called little beacon lights that they're portable. So I really like the idea of portable and chargeable. So it's like charge it up, take it away with you, or even just not necessarily for travel as well, just within your own house where like it's so much more convenient to just, you want to go read by the couch, but there's not a lamp there. You can just kind of pick up your lamp and then use it, sort of thing. So we've really worked on developing a whole bunch of different lighting products. I like to say kind of just like looking at how people are using light in the evening and creating different products to help make it more convenient. Like the motion light one's a good one. It's like I just walk down my hallway and it just like lights up. I don't have to like turn on the hallway light and then get exposed to like lots of bright light. Yeah, so I mean, I think today we've probably got about 40 different lighting products that we've kind of just continued to look at what people are looking for, or what people are currently using that's a version that's got the wrong type of lighting in it. We said, well, let's have a look at that. Let's try and create something that serves the same purpose but emits the more beneficial spectrums.
Yeah, I will say, so me and my husband, we camp a lot. We love your beacon light and we also love your book light. In fact, my husband was fishing and he left his book light clipped on the bed at his cabin that they were renting. And he came home, he was like, oh, I left my book light. And so he kept taking mine and had to get him a new one. Yeah, people got to go check out the website. There are a lot of just wonderful circadian friendly options to all of the needs that you need a solution for. You've thought of them all, Daniel. Or is there anything that you're working on that you feel like's missing from what you have created?
Oh, we're always working on new products. I've always got a few in the pipeline. So,
Okay.
But it's getting harder and harder because the more I create, the harder it is to. But I certainly still have a few more in store. So
Is one idea to bring in the infrared in that kind of triple light there?
it is. I'm working on it. Yeah,
I bet you are.
Yeah, it's a tricky one though. There's a lot of balancing things around cost and price, and because no one's going to spend $200 on a single light bulb, for example. But it's possible, and I'm hoping we can make something. Because if we talk about the history of light bulbs and we talked about incandescent lighting, one of the big things that it had was infrared light, and it's a lot of infrared light was coming from light bulbs, and we live in a world indoor, even with our lighting, that a lack of infrared light and the need for our biology to actually be absorbing infrared light is very, very important. So if we can try and create a light source that when people are in their indoor lifestyles, we can bring back the infrared light we did used to get from the incandescent lighting, I think we'd be in a very good position in terms of the types of light we're being exposed to.
Check in with time on India. Do we have time to ask him about red light therapy?
Yeah, go ahead and then we have a couple more minutes. Let's just touch on that because that's another big part of your products that you offer.
Yeah, just I saw 9 different options. You want to tell us a little bit about those, if you could?
Yeah, so I mean, red light therapy is very different from just red light. So that's where some people get a bit confused. They go, oh, I've got a red lamp, whatever.
Of course,
the red light therapy is using very specific wavelengths of red and near infrared light. And the more scientific term for it is photobiomodulation, which is a term of using light to influence our biology, essentially. And what it normally is, well, there's actually a lot of red light therapy. It's becoming quite popular now. I think everyone's talking about red light therapy face masks. Yeah, like that. But we're using very high powered like panels, which are emitting very specific frequencies of red at 630 and 660 nanometers, and then near infrared at 810, 830, and 850 nanometers. And we're using these very specific wavelengths that have that are based on research to have very beneficial biological effects in the body. And what essentially it's doing is the infrared light in particular is able to penetrate quite deep into the tissue. Those specific frequencies of light are very bioactive. They are very absorbed a lot by our mitochondria. So our mitochondria are producing energy in the cell. And so what those specific frequencies of light do is they're uptaken by the mitochondria. The mitochondria is able to produce ATP, which is the energy fuel source in the body, more efficiently. So if the cell can produce energy more efficiently at that cell level, it allows that to function more optimally. So that can result in, so normally when you see disease or problems, it really comes down to mitochondrial dysfunction, the inability to actually produce ATP efficiently. If you can upregulate that and get that into a more optimal state where it's producing ATP more efficiently, the benefits really depend on what the dysfunction is in the first place. So at a wide range, like people were getting benefits around pain reduction, around joint health, anything around tissue injury, recovery, people using it like on the brain for like brain conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. People, like, for example, you've got like thyroid dysfunction, people can use it on their thyroid to help that improve and start to run more optimally. So the benefits are really like widespread, but the real key thing is that frequencies of light need to be that near infrared light, and it's generally ranging in the 800 to 900 nanometer range with these specific frequencies that are more advantageous. The reason it's in that range is if you go back into the red spectrum, so not in the 800 to 900, if you're in like the 700 and 600 nanometers, it doesn't penetrate into the body far enough. And then if you go too far, it penetrates into the body, but it's absorbed by the water in your body, not by the cells and not by the mitochondria. So it's a very narrow band of like infrared light. That's the sweet spot that it can get in deep enough, and then the mitochondria can actually use that light. And then the red light as well, because it actually is called red light therapy. The red light is more providing benefits at the skin layer, so it won't penetrate deep into the cells, but people, and that's why it's kind of got popular in the beauty industry, because it helps with like wrinkles, fine lines, like skin blemishes, anything around the skin, and helping with the skin. So most of the panels we sell are really not, they've kind of got 50% of them are red light and 50% infrared, kind of combining and blending that light together to kind of work synergistically to provide benefits at the skin layer, but benefits deep into the tissue as well. So that's kind of a high level overview of what it is. And then you've got kind of different sizes to treat different areas. So like some people might like have a little small device because they want to treat an injury or a specific problem on their body. But then you can go through to like full body, head to toe, like panels that you stand in front of to get overall systemic benefits to red light therapy. And like that's what you're either in kind of two groups. You're using it to treat a specific condition or trying to get into a more optimal state of health from disease, or you're just trying to maintain optimal health. And like that's what I use it for. I find it gives me energy during the day. I find it so like immune system modulation in it. I don't get sick as much. I know when like, I'm going away and I don't use it for like 2 weeks, and like I definitely notice like I miss it. So I mean, there's that, and that's where like also people are using it more for like, you know, professional athletes for recovery and stuff like that. So it's, yeah, the benefits are so wide range. It's probably one of the most studied things out there now in terms of, if you look at the umbrella of photobiomodulation, I think there's around 8,500 studies now done on it, which is crazy.
That was higher than my last count. I'd heard 7,000.
Yep, it's getting up.
I mean, when we first started selling red light therapy, we were promoting how many studies it was done, and it was like it's these like 5,500 studies on it, right? And every year I've got access to it. There's a guy in Europe who consolidates all the studies into like a database essentially, and puts like the links to them and the outcomes and what wavelengths were used. So like every few months I like go in there and see how that's been updated, and it's just growing, and the research on it's just, you know, there's more and more every month coming out on it.
One thing I would
awesome.
Yeah, one thing I would say on just to tie back to the blue blockers and blue light is that just to highlight for people, blue light is considered very dehydrating for the body because of how it hits the mitochondria and it impacts not just ATP, but how it produces water. And then red light affects the mitochondria, like you really rightly pointed out about makes more ATP and energy, but it's very dehydrating, or it's hydrating where they make this deuterium depleted water. So I just thought I would highlight that. And also when you're mentioning all the different conditions and ways you can use it, I just broke my leg, as people listening to the podcast over the weeks are finding out. Yeah, I've never used so much red light therapy. I now have access to the scar, so I'm going to try and use that more red. But the infrared I was using to help, with inflammation. And the other thing is the gut. Just wanted to, because you mentioned the immune, and helping the immune system, you don't get sick as much. Yeah, so much of our immune system is in the gut, and that's a place you can use to treat, is to put the red light panel in front of your belly. And a lot of people don't think about that. They're thinking about skin and beauty and
Yeah.
hair and things like that. There's so many benefits to it. It's exciting, really exciting time with red light therapy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that we are very close to our time. So I wanted to ask you our signature question. So the name of our podcast is Quantum Healthy. And what, in your opinion, what does quantum healthy mean to you?
Unhealthy to me it means how do we live in the modern world but closely aligned to the rhythms of nature, like, because ultimately that when I look at everything like around trying to optimize health, it's like trying to look at like how nature behaves and how we're supposed to live, and how do we not necessarily like go back and live with no electricity and do all these things where it's going back to like caveman days, but it's like how do we closely align our rhythms and how we live our lifestyles and our environments to be conducive with how nature is.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, wow. Nobody's mentioned living in the modern world, but it's so true. We do, and we have to figure out how to do it now because we don't really want to go back to caveman days and just,
And,
the
and
fire.
it's like technology is awesome. Like I personally love using technology, but like you just got to be able to interface with it in the modern world in a way like you can't just blindly use it, or you'll be so far disconnected from nature. Like it's like there's ways. I think it's just finding ways and tools and ways to use it, but use it in a way that's not disconnecting you so much.
Yeah.
Daniel, for your offerings, I could ask, what are your offerings? Obviously the company, but one thing I want to point out for people is that I noticed you actually blog a lot, and you can learn a lot about blue light, and thank you for sharing all that you have there.
Yeah. Now we've got a few. I think there's probably about 100 or so blogs
I
on our
know.
website on all different things around light, and over the years we've continued to find new things to talk about in there. So
Yeah,
people wanting to dive into it more, there's a wealth of information there as well.
so how can people find you? Do you have social media, and what's the website name?
So website is blockbluelight.com, just how it sounds. And same as our socials, like things like blockbluelight_official is our Instagram. We're on there a bit, sharing also education tips, stuff like that as well. And then beyond that, I mean, we have on our website, you can contact us through contact. We've got like WhatsApp chat and Facebook chat that comes directly through to our support team, who are all very knowledgeable also on blue light and finding the right product for people. So some people will come to the website and they're a little bit like overwhelmed. They might have just learned about that, might have just listened to a podcast and understood, and like, I need to get in on this sort of to improve my health. But they'll come and they'll be like, where do I start, sort of thing. There's like all these different glasses, different lighting and stuff. So I mean, we always encourage them to reach out to us, and we can kind of at least guide them a bit based on their situation on like, where's the best place to start and what's going to be most beneficial for them. If they don't want to jump into everything, if they just want a few products to start with, we can kind of guide what will probably provide them the most benefit.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. I just to tie a few things together, I just want to say thank you for your the crappy health journey that you went. I've suffered insomnia. It's really just, it's like the worst. And the migraines, terrible. And thank you for firing that doctor because it forced your journey into researching the quantum biology pillar of light. And thank you for spending $20 on those UVX glasses, your N of one little health experiment. And now to that, and creating this beautiful company, BlockBlueLight, that not only helps people's health, but honestly, you are now, and your company, you guys are writing the latest history of the light bulb. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. And that's always my passion, is to be able to, share the knowledge I've got. And, if I'm able to like educate someone to not have to go through what I went through, it's always a win in my book. So.
Yeah. And you will,
Love that.
people will hear this, and yeah, it will touch lives.
Yep, that's very aligned with our mission. We want this to get to everybody who may not know about this and these topics. And yeah, that's the underlying goal, right? Is to help.
It's what drives.
Because we were all there once needing the help ourselves.
Yeah, we know. I think we both know,
like.
all three of us know a little bit about sleep deprivation and all of our health journeys. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel. And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to the Quantum Healthy Podcast. We hope you found some value in this information. And if you feel inspired, please share it and leave us a 5-star review. This will help us reach so many more people. If you want to connect with Laura, you can find her at laurakistmanwellness.com and Endia at endiaray.com. Links are below in the show notes. Now, go find some sunlight and embrace your own quantum healthy.